Sometimes you need a little something, need a little something more. Nothing you can buy at your 5 and dime or your local convenience store, 'cause you got an itching for it. You got an itching for it. Itching for something, boy, you can't scratch. Might be a little bit of moonshine, might be railroad gin, might be a little bit of China white from a boat that just come in. You got an itching for it, itching for it, itching for something, boy, you can't scratch. Yeah. Sometimes you do a little evil, call your backdoor friend. Every time a husband's sliding out, you go slipping in. You got an itching for it, itching for it, itching for something, boy, you can't scratch. Might be a little bit of candy, might be a piece of cake. Your nose is open, your mouth is dry, only so much you can take. You got an itch, something like that.
I love it. Jimmy
Well, you
Vivino.
know, when you write your own blues, you can only write about your own blues.
And you got an itch, huh?
Well, you know, I used to.
You don't itch anymore, Jimmy?
Well, I do, but I be careful where I scratch these days. But
oh, that's so wise.
No, you know, I mean, we all. We all misbehaved for a long time. And you and I were talking about starting when we were 13 years old.
Okay, wait, before we get into the story, we got to introduce the show.
Oh,
who are you?
But I'm Jimmy Vivino, and I'm just a journeyman musician out here.
Okay, well, I'll let you get away with that.
I have, been
This
around.
is Game Changers, by the way.
I've been Game Changers.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've been around a long time.
All right, wait. Before you tell your story, I gotta do the thing.
Oh well, I'm used to commercials.
Well, it's not really
about
commercial.
Yeah.
It's not really commercial. This is supporting people who support me, who support us, and who make it possible for us to do edu-tainment. That's my new edu-tainment, my new favorite word. Thank you, Melanie Chartoff. It's fucking cool.
Thanks, Mel.
And it's great. Okay, so I want to give a shout out to my friend Eileen Angel, who wrote this book, How to Calm the Hell Down and Be Happy. And in times like this, it's much needed. And I want to say that I have a blurb on the back of her book. I'm like very honored and touched. But anyway, How to Calm the Hell Down and Be Happy. And it's funny. It's funny, but she also gives really good tips, which I really love. And
a recovering warrior.
I didn't even say it. She's
funny. A recovering warrior.
But she's recovering.
Yes.
Because she hasn't recovered. I saw her yesterday.
And nobody does.
Nobody
by the
does.
way.
And just like
it's a constant.
As an addict, I will be an addict till the day I die, even though I've been in recovery for a gazillion years.
It's like recovering from loving music. You don't.
Who would want to do that?
Well,
Who would want to do that?
You know, you never know what people think is bad for you. You know, way back in the old days.
Well,
too much of that rock and roll.
Yeah, we're going to talk about
They were wrong.
We're going to talk about
they
the
were
rock
just
and roll.
wrong.
Because, we might have even been at the Fillmore at the same time.
We probably were.
We probably have. Okay, so I just want to say to one of my favorite people on the planet, Rick Smolke, who, by the way, if you ever need anything printed, if you need liner notes for a CD, if you need business cards, if you need posters for the Fab Four, whatever you need, Rick Smolke, Quick Impressions in Chicago. He does beautiful work. Did my tissue boxes. He does beautiful work, and he's also got the heart of gold. He's never charged a musician a dime to do work for him. He's that guy. He's that guy. And he does this whole philanthropic thing for the veterans. If you haven't seen the PSA that we did for Veterans Day, we just did another one with Jimmy now that's going to come out. He's the best. Salt of the earth. Quick Impressions in Chicago. And my hairdresser, who I need to see so badly.
I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
Right?
Because I've been sitting here reading that.
So her hairspray, Ruby Begonia Salon, Hair Crush Love. Fuck off. That's why she's my hairdresser. Because I love her.
That says for heart cut off.
It was...
Don't tell me that says for heart cut off.
Yeah, but when I say it says fuck off. And I'm going on Saturday and I can't wait. Nicole Venables of the Ruby Begonia Salon, she's the best. She does the hair on Will and Grace and on Matt LeBlanc's show. She's the best. Okay, so now let's talk about Jimmy Vivino. So
Do we have to?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well.
Yes, we do. We do. All right, let's see how we're looking over here.
Okay, here I am. Like I'm just like now.
I know. What, you're like
where's
hiding.
my guitar?
Well, she's gonna expose me. What?
We're both. Well, I'm from New Jersey. Right?
We're both 55 though.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Or 55s.
We're 55s.
55s. Yeah.
Okay, so we're not 55 years old. We were born that year. So you were in New Jersey, Jimmy. Come on.
Well, you know, I come from a family in that I was born in Patterson, New Jersey. You know.
Okay, I'm from back east, but Patterson.
Well, Patterson is where Lou Costello is from. You know, so it was like huge. It was Silk City. Well, it's not far at all. It was the Silk City. It had the Great Falls there, and it also is where the first Colt 45 factory was.
Now that's
and
important.
they made parachutes there during the war for because all the silk industry was there.
Wow.
And right next to Passaic, where other famous people like Donald Fagen was from Passaic.
And you played with Donald, didn't you?
Yeah. But then we talk, and we have the same birthday. January 10th.
Stop.
Yeah.
But not the same year.
Not the same year. No, he's a couple years older than me. Not many. Musically, he's 5,000 years older than all of us.
Well, did you know him from Jersey?
I didn't know him. I didn't know him from Jersey. That was revealed to me much later that he was from Passaic, New Jersey. And
did you grow up with?
And Walter was from Queens. So yeah.
Did you? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not Forest Hills. They just have in fact, they just named a Walter Becker Boulevard there. He just got a street.
Went to high school.
Walter would have hated that probably, but they did anyway. Anyway, so I was from Jersey. My brothers and I, we were.
Okay, wait. All musical? Because Uncle Floyd, your brother who was
Floyd and my brother Jerry, who's been playing with me forever, a saxophone player. Is the best musician of all of us.
Is that so?
My father came over he was born in 1927. Let's see, he came over in 1932 or 33. Yeah, they're from Calabria.
Okay.
And my mother's people are from Salerno, outside of Naples.
Okay.
And he came over on a boat, just like in The Godfather. Like in Titanic, they were on the bottom of the boat. No, they were carpenters. My grandfather came over first.
Okay.
And worked in the coal mines and in Pennsylvania, and also as a carpenter, and sent money back home. And finally brought the whole family over. So my father and his brother and sister and my grandma came over in somewhere. I'm imagining somewhere around 1932 or 33, around the time my mother was born. They were coming over. And, they were carpenters when they came over here. And my father was an incredible trumpet player. I mean, he was like the best musician I ever heard in my life. And he wasn't allowed to do that. It was not allowed. It was like you got a family.
Make you look at them.
You have a family. You have a family of carpenters coming over, and not only my grandfather, but his brothers. So
talk to Christina.
My grandfather, his brothers, and there was probably 7 or 8 of them had a construction business together.
Right.
And my father having 3 sons, it's like none of you guys want to be. He didn't want us to be. He wasn't allowed to be. He was such a great trumpet player, and it killed him. He would come home and sit there on the couch and play along with Louis Armstrong and Charlie Shavers and Harry James.
Did he ever do clubs?
Oh well, he played. My father's uncle, Frank Vivino, owned the Plaza Ballroom in Patterson, and he had a big band. And my father played in that band. That was a part-time thing, though. He wasn't allowed to. And my uncle played bass, and the whole family was at the Plaza Ballroom playing in this big band, a dance band, for Saturday nights. But music wasn't a serious thing. It wasn't, it was like, if I said I wanted to be a musician, then everyone would say, well, yeah, but what do you really want to do? What are you going to do? It's almost like that scene in Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, where everybody's got advice. Plastics, son. Go into this. Go into be a lawyer, be a doctor, do anything. Don't be a musician. My father, though, And he raised 3 of them. But he worked his ass off to get us money to get us lessons. And and I would have to play my lesson. I was a trumpet player.
So
I'd have to play it for him.
All right. So when did you start?
Probably. I think probably when I was 7 or 8.
And where are you in the pecking order of your brothers?
I'm the baby.
You're the baby.
Yeah.
So and is Floyd the oldest?
Yeah.
So was he already playing music?
He was playing piano. He was playing piano.
Yeah.
We had a piano in the house, and there was a trumpet laying around, so I picked that up.
Okay.
My other brother studied with my father's cousin Frank, saxophone player. So my brother studied clarinet with him. He had a flutophone first. It was a little plastic thing.
Oh wow!
And he used to play it in the bathtub. and he would play like the Gunsmoke theme. He would play like Bonanza. He would play all the TV shows. He had this great ear.
I was going to say, were you all playing? Did you all play by ear?
Yeah. Well, no. We learned to read music. You know, we learned to read. So my grandmother, my father's mother's brother, Frank Perosi, was a professor that taught mandolin, accordion, guitar, and
so the whole family's musical.
Well, you know, there's the carpenters versus the musicians. You know, so the musicians.
Did they have a softball team?
Well, no, and you know, everybody thought that Frank, you know,
the carpenters would beat the musicians' ass.
Yeah, Uncle Nick Perosi.
Yeah.
They thought he was crazy anyway. I remember Perosi's school of music in Patterson, and he would teach mandolin and all these accordion, and so music was always around.
Was
I
music
was
always
playing
being
trumpet.
played in that? Like, what music were you? What music was
My
playing
father
in your house?
was playing mostly Louis Armstrong, Judy Garland, Frank Sinatra. He loved Jonah Jones, another trumpet player, Al Hurt, mostly trumpet players.
And did you kids
and Italian singers? You know.
Did you kids Louis Prima and stuff like that?
We didn't hear Louis Prima, but we did because my aunt, my mother's kid sister. My mother had a kid sister. You don't hear that much anymore. Her kids. My Aunt Connie was like 16 when my mother was probably 10 years older than her. You know, and Aunt Connie lived with us, and she had all those Frankie Valli and Dion records. You know, so we heard all those Italian singers. And Dion, now I work with Dion. Now, I mean, we're good friends now. And my brother Jerry worked with Frankie for years. But it was about that, there was very Italian singers. So when the Beatles came, it was a shock that, that I loved the Beatles when I was 9 years old and they came on Ed Sullivan and I'm watching them and all of a sudden I'm like thinking twice about the trumpet. I'm like, that trumpet, really? I don't see a trumpet. I see Herb Alpert with a trumpet.
So that's when things started to shift.
They started to shift for me because and we had a dance team too in '64. I had this habit, kids have that habit where you're going to the whole table's shaking, and my father would go, Jesus, throw the fork up in the air and say, what, what's wrong with you? I said, that's it. And everybody knows me. I say that's it all the time now. That's it. You're taking dance lessons. We're taking your cousin Frank Perry, who is your
family just had the whole thing covered.
Frank Perry was friends with Fred Kelly, who was Gene Kelly's brother.
Wow.
So we were going to go and take dance lessons.
They were Irish. Yeah.
So we went to Sandra Lee because she had Lee Meredith, who plays Ola in the Producers, right? Lee Meredith was dancing, had just left the studio.
Wow.
So that was in Patterson. Oh, Sandra Lee. You got to go to Sandra Lee's studio. So
what
we
kind of
did.
dancing
So
did you
what we did tap dancing, and we did modern jazz.
I love it.
Stuff like that,
Do you
West
know
Side
how to
Story.
do it?
I haven't done it for years, but we danced at the World's Fair. So in 1964. Sandra Lee, as promised, got us, this great gig dancing at the World's Fair at the New Jersey Pavilion. And I find out years later, and this is such convoluted shit, but I found out later that Al Cooper said to me, when you guys, 64, you were dancing, the Queens Pavilion was right next to the Jersey Pavilion. And me and Harvey Brooks were on top of the carousel every day at noon. This is like a year before the Dylan thing broke, before Al and he had already been in the Royal Teens, short shorts and all that, and been writing songs. But he said, me and Harvey had this gig where we played on top of the carousel every day at noon. So he said, we actually were gigging together at the same time
That's
in 1964.
crazy. So you danced at the World's Fair.
And then it got to the point where my brother Floyd would be like, we'd be after school, and I'm like 10.
Was
11.
it like the three of you?
Yeah, the three of us. Well, because in those days, okay, you guys and my father and all the people in the family were like, you want to be in showbiz? Well, you got to do what the Osmonds do. Because they were like on the Andy Williams summer replacement show. They were kids.
Right.
Ted Mack amateur hour. Mm-hmm. Tony Grant's Cavalcade of Stars in Atlantic City. We went down there and did that. Watched the horse jump in.
Did you do Ted
Mack? We did Tony Grant down in Atlantic City. We never got to Ted Mack. But that was the thing. The Ames brothers. They all dance. They all sing. They all play instruments. You have to do everything. So we were like showbiz.
So in other words, your father was kind of encouraging you all.
Well, always not pushing, but encouraging.
Yeah.
Because if your lesson wasn't ready, you didn't get to do it.
Okay, so what about academics? Was he strict about that stuff?
Well, we were good students. We just were. But rock and roll changed all that. It made you. I'm not dancing anymore. I'm not playing the trumpet anymore. Even though I played trumpet all the way through high school, I started to fall off and thinking, and I did learn from playing the trumpet. How to read music, and also when I was, I guess, around 16 or 17, I wrote a piece for orchestra and some stuff for big. I started arranging for big band because I bought some books. Yeah,
and so that led to what became your
I got some books. I said, well, this is cool. I'll get this Walter Pistone's book, Practical Range of Instruments. Some of the teachers at school gave me some books to study, and I did, and I started transcribing.
So you were doing that in high school?
I was doing it in high school, and I had an independent study. We used to have these grants when the Democrats were in power. We had these government grants.
There were arts in the schools when the Democrats were in power.
And that's right, arts in the school. And I was on an independent study program that was funded by the government, so I could work on my orchestra piece, and I could also.
So wait, what first kicked that in for you? Did your brothers do that as well?
No, I was just hooked on arranging. I would look at a record.
Do you remember what started that?
Yeah, well, I would look at a record. I always had this conversation with Paul Shaffer about how we both. The records are. The records are textbooks in our history. So I would look at the record, listen to it, and as I'm listening to it, another record, I'd look at the one and I'd read it. Okay. Or read the album cover, find out where did they record it.
Joints on it. You were actually reading it.
That's only good when you have an album that a double album. They separate seeds.
Or they didn't always have to have a double album. They still open sometimes, even if they weren't
or
a double.
You can just rip it open. So I would look and see, who was that? Who Quincy Jones or Ralph Schuckett, who did the Johnny Pate up in Chicago, Dave Bartholomew in New Orleans, who the arrangers were.
What do you think attracted you to? What about that was interesting to you?
Because my love of big band music, and I had this Jerry Gray. Jerry Gray plays the Glenn Miller Orchestra. That I listened to over and over, and a couple of Al Jolson records and some like weird stuff. My brother Floyd had shit going on in the basement. You don't want to. He would.
Floyd played for me at the Rock and Roll Cafe on
Now Floyd would go out.
Yeah.
When I'm out practicing.
How much older is he?
He's 51.
Okay.
1951.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah. 4 years older. So he would go out and clean out houses in Ridgewood, New Jersey. He would go to some lady's house, old ladies up in the mansions, said, "You want your attic cleaned out?" "Sure." No charge. He'd be walking out with records. You want to throw these away? Sure, throw them away. And they would say, "Take that machine out of the corner too." The wind-up machines. He started collecting this stuff.
God.
He had 5,000 records in the basement. He had Sun 78s. He had Bluebird. He had Sonny Boy Williamson, and on Bluebird he had Robert Johnson. He had all these He had all this great music, and I heard it coming up through the basement constantly. So then I heard a lot of that arranging and jazz, and then I started a band with my brother when I guess I was. We always had a piano in the house, so in defiance of my trumpet lesson,
Okay, so did
I learned
piano
to play
come
the piano.
before guitar for you?
Yeah, guitar was the last.
Okay.
So I would sit at the piano. I figured 67, I guess. Oh, I like that Crystal Ship by the Doors. I figured that out. And Light My Fire. I figured out a lot of Summer in the City.
So you all had the ear?
Well, my brother's Jerry's is better than any of ours.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
he's just better. He's just the best musician.
Wow.
You know, as far as his
and he's a saxophone player.
as far as his facility on his instrument.
Does he play any other instruments? Because you play so many.
He plays every saxophone and flute and clarinet and oboe and everything with a reed on it. You know.
Yeah.
But so I got interested in what's inside of music, the chord structure. With the piano, I looked at the piano and said, wow, this is something, because it's just the spacing of the intervals that make the chords. Mm-hmm. And then you just transpose it to different keys. Mm-hmm. There's one place for a note to be. It's not like guitar where you can play the same note in 4 different places. It gets confusing. Piano is really it's the perfect arranging instrument too. You can visualize voicings and you can, so I started writing from the piano.
Okay.
And started transcribing records. I remember when the Blood, Sweat, and Tears record came out, and that was 67. I'm 12, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I started a band with my brother.
You made me so very happy.
Yeah. No. Before that, Love You More Than You'll Ever Know, Al Cooper's band. And so I started transcribing that record, and I had all these 3-horn charts, with 3 or 4 horns, and I said, we gotta have a band now because I got these songs ready, And so we started like a 8-piece band when I was like 13, I guess. Me and my brother were doing that, and I got a Farfisa organ that my Uncle Joe, his son, he didn't want to play it anymore. So my father did a job for my Uncle Joe, who paid him with a Farfisa organ. It's kind of like my mother had sort of the Jack and the Beanstalk fight with my father. What are you gonna, what are we gonna eat? Farfisa organ now? Is that what we're having for dinner this week? Well, geez, Em, Joe said, Joe Provenzale, Joe Pro, he said I could have the organ if I did the job for him, and then I wanted to give Jimmy the organ, so he gave me the organ.
It sounds like your dad was a very cool
just person. Really cool, but he was like Ralph Cramden. He got in trouble with my mother because he would do things like that.
Is your father still alive?
No.
Did he live to see you have your
success? Oh yeah. We brought him on stage at the Bottom Line, all 3 of us, and he played the trumpet with us. And it was just he was just so great, he got to see it. So then I have a band, I have a Farfisa organ, I got all the guys together. Now Frank Pagano was in this band, not Rich.
Okay.
And my brother Jerry and myself, and I think I was playing trumpet and organ sometimes. There were 3 other horns, and then I would play. And you're doing these big bands. And we're playing Sly and the Family Stone, and we're playing Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Anything with horns. We got the Electric Flag album.
Are you singing?
I'm singing, and the bass player Brian is singing. My dear friend Brian is playing bass and singing. Mm-hmm. Who figures really big in my life later on. We had bands together. We went to the Fillmore together. His brother Ralph took us in his Chevy, in his Impala. And, we smoked and ate Twinkies in the back. And in that order. And,
of course.
And we went to the Fillmore. And I remember,
we were talking about this a little before the show. So the Fillmore East, for those of you who don't know, was the greatest concert venue ever in New York.
And people in San Francisco would say that they had theirs.
Right, they said theirs was better, but I've never...
Well, theirs was first.
Theirs was first, but...
In New York, it was the best thing ever.
Best thing ever. So
that's where I saw everybody
that
anyone you could almost, as you did, imagine. The first time I went,
and we were kids when the Fillmore was open.
I think it was 68.
14.
I was 13,
yeah.
and I went and I said, "Oh, Al Cooper's playing." He had left Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Yeah.
He had out the I Stand Alone album out. I gotta go see Al Cooper. Oh, and who else? Oh, and Procol Harum's on the show, right? And the Jerry Hahn Brotherhood, which is Mike Finnegan on organ.
Well, I was talking about Mike Finnegan yesterday.
It's Mike Finnegan on organ, Jerry Hahn. I can't remember who the drummer was. It's a trio, and Finnegan.
Finnegan. He played on
Mike
Electric
Finnegan.
Ladyland.
Is not only that. He's just a great organ player and singer. It's just one of those musicians I admired from when I was 13.
Wow.
And to get to know him now is it's one of those things when people, and I say this all the time because I really believe it, they step out of your record collection into your life, and it's like,
God.
what? That's,
okay, have you ever been disappointed in the person?
No, because the one that did disappointed me in the most royal, regal way that he did everyone else.
Let's hear.
A guy who punched Keith Richard. Okay? If he punched Keith Richard out, it's okay with me. It's Chuck, you know?
Oh, okay.
It's Chuck, and I love Chuck Berry. And when I worked with Johnny Johnson, we finally straightened it all out after years of Chuck just, just giving me a hard time. Because I was leading bands.
Did you play
I was leading
with him?
bands at the Garden, these big shows
Yeah.
for Richard Nader, these big giant, and Dick Fox, these big doo-wop shows.
Right.
And rock and roll shows, in the 80s.
Right.
And Chuck Berry would be on the shows and he'd just give me a hard fucking time.
Well, he gave everybody I ever played with him, he gave
and
a
then
hard
years
time.
I'm working with Johnny Johnson when Keith brought him back, and me and Mike Merritt and James Warmworth are playing with Johnny. Again, I'm playing like 5 times. Chuck is just giving me a hard time. He walks over and says, "If you keep playing my riff, I'm knocking you out." And I said, "Well, what's your riff?" "I'm playing the rhythm." He goes, "That's mine." I said, "Well, how about this?" "That's mine." He said, "All right, you won't want me to play." So we get to years later. This goes on and on for years. That in LA, that KLON used to have a blues festival here. That was great. And like John Lee Hooker's on it, Etta James is on it. I'm on there with Chuck, with Johnny Johnson and Mike and James. We are representing the chess rhythm section. And we have Jimmy Rogers, who if you don't know, you should. Jimmy Rogers, Billy Boy Arnold, Hubert Sumlin, Chuck Berry, and I can't remember, there were like 5 different artists that were all on Chess Records. And that day, I was backstage. I was talking to Joe Louis Walker, who's a great friend of mine and a great blues guitar player. And Johnny pulls Chuck into the trailer, slams the door. And Joe says, "What's going on in there?" I said, "I don't know what's going on." But Chuck came out nice. And Johnny said later, Johnny was the sweetest family. Him and Hubert were like family to me. He said, "I had a talk with Chuck. Don't mess with my boys." He goes, "Johnny, don't you know he's been doing this for like 4 years to me?" He goes, "Yeah, but now it's time to end it." I said, "Thanks." He said,
Did he change it going forward?
He went over the top nice.
Ooh.
Like, "Hey, come on up here and play with me." I was like, "Oh, he's patronizing me." It's okay. It's okay. Look, any story that involves you and someone like Chuck Berry, right? Or anyone of that staff. I mean, he's one of the 3 or 4 people that, to me, changed music.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. He's responsible for a lot of the poetry that Bob Dylan picked up on. A lot of, the List songs. Johnny's in the basement cooking up the medicine, right?
Yeah.
That's like Too Much Monkey Business.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
No, it is. It's the listing thing that Dylan got into, and it also goes back to folk music and Ramblin' Jack, and but Chuck Berry was well aware of all of this, Woody Guthrie and Grand Ole Opry and everything. But as a songwriter, he was a poet, a street poet, Chuck. And I think that Dylan picked up on that, and then the Beatles picked up on Dylan. And the Beatles, those 3 to me, are all important in changing music. And with no disrespect to Brian Wilson or the other geniuses that we all love, and everybody's got their favorites, and will say, "What about so-and-so?" Well, for me, those three people are the Beatles as one entity.
Right.
All 4 of them, not one of them, all 4. And Chuck Berry and Bob Dylan. That's responsible for everything that I love.
That's really
and because it comes from the blues first. Bob comes from the blues. Beatles come from rhythm and blues. Chuck Berry comes from Chicago blues and St. Louis blues. Saying that anyone who says the blues is blues is the blues is it's a root. It's like the sun. If you talk about the other planets, you don't talk. The sun is what keeps us moving.
What year did Chuck start writing music?
I guess it's let's see, he joined up with Johnny probably around 52.
Well, that's really early.
Yeah,
Okay.
53. And it's the same time when this whole thing was bubbling up with Elvis. You know, see, Elvis Presley, as important as he is really a rhythm and blues singer that had a great band, you know, and a great sound and a great look. But he didn't write anything that changed anything. You know, he didn't write anything. He just moved it from one neighborhood to the next. You know, very well. Very well, and hipped us all to this rhythm and blues that he loves so much, and some of the gospel and other things that Elvis he was important the way Frank Sinatra was important, but they're not important as writers.
Right.
They're stars that have incredible power and can also turn people on to a lot of good stuff.
And
music
impacted the way music.
But when you look at the way
that
Chuck Berry was tapped into the teenagers, white, black, yellow, green, whatever, and Bob Dylan was just like how did this happen? How did this happen? And then the Beatles changed not only our idea of bands playing and writing their own music, coming on and also fashion, religion, politics. Very
Dylan
short.
was so much about it. He was
but Bob Dylan was more like, I don't want to talk about politics. He was like, Bob Dylan was like, I'm not here to be political. I mean, he was.
He
so was. Yeah, but not. He wasn't up on a stump. He wasn't grandstanding it.
Not at all.
John Lennon was grandstanding it.
Right.
Bob Dylan was just writing it.
Right.
You figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out for yourself, and so they're all. It's so important that those writers are the ones who change things.
When Jimmy and I were talking about, Jimmy is the co-founder of the Fab Four with Will Lee, and we were talking about, they just did a concert at the Beacon, a George Harrison concert.
Oh, yeah.
I saw them do the whole White Album.
When
you did Revolution 9, I mean, note for note, that is the sickest thing ever.
Well, we have books. We have Will made scripts.
Well, Will said that on his honeymoon, he was spending the whole honeymoon figuring out the fucking thing.
And then he got Sandrine to make Yoko noises into a tape. But it'd be better if you were naked. And I'm like, well, that's your honeymoon, Will, huh?
But when we were talking about the Beatles before, now I forgot what I was going to say about what you said.
Well, it's classical music to us, It's art. It's Mozart in his own time was a pop star. We know if you watch the movie Amadeus, you see that this guy was flamboyant. He was right. He was defying the system. He was pissing people off. He was writing brilliant music, and he was living the life, just like crazy.
Will brought up Amadeus also.
Yeah, because you see that the Beatles were a lot like that. It's classical music in that the same way that Mozart was pop music in his time.
Interesting.
They decided to make it sort of like it's almost unapproachable to the mainstream. It should be, people should tap into Mozart and Beethoven a little more.
Okay, so we're out of order here, but since we're here, I want to ask, how did you and Will come, what made you, I mean, I know Beatle fans, of course, influence, what made you guys...
Well, Will and I knew each other. We had met each other through a lot of projects in New York, a lot of studios, a lot of different things that I had worked with Paul Shaffer and with Will on, and we had a mutual respect for each other and worked together quite a bit. And we lived in the same building on 300 Mercer, which was right across from the Bottom Line, right? Like the side of the bottom. So, and I moved there so I could just walk over to the BottomLine and work because I was working there so much.
Wow.
And then it closed.
Well,
and then I moved to 52nd Street to live next to SIR, and then that closed. So I'm thinking of moving to the White House, right next to them. I think I'm going to move to Pennsylvania Avenue.
I like it.
And hopefully that will close too. That might close too. But so seriously though, so we're living in the same.
Care of that, please?
Yeah, we're living in the same building.
Yeah.
And I would get home from Conan, and he'd get home from Letterman, and I get in the elevator. Hey, man. So just as the elevator's doors open.
Yeah.
And I'm walking out. Hey, when are we going to start that Beatle band? Doors closed. What's he talking about? Why? So every night, Beatle band. We're going to meet him. I said, I don't want to play Beatles music. It's been played. He goes, no, we're going to play all the music that they never played live. That's going to be the point of this. We're going to take it from when they stop playing And that was the original intent.
You just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
That was the original intent. Will was like, no, we're not going to be wigs and suits and do accents and corny. You know, it's not like my grandmother used to have wax fruit, and you want to take a bite of it, and that's what most Beatle bands are, is wax fruit.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be like real live vegetables and fruits.
You want to be juicy, yummy.
Well, no, we want to. We don't want to make it into a, Hall of the Presidents at Disney World. That's animatronic Beatles on stage. You know, I mean, that's been done and it's still being done. And God bless you who wants to do that, and people that want to see that. That's fine. Mm-hmm. McDonald's is the most popular hamburger, like I told you. Did I tell you this? That the best hamburger is probably down the street, right?
Yes.
There's some guy at a bar or someone's flipping burgers at some Irish pub, and you're having the great juicy. But it's not popular. Right. So we want to be that hamburger. We don't want to be a McDonald's hamburger. We want to be that people that do come to see us know that they're going to have a sonic experience, which Will said we would bring the records to the stage. He said it's going to take 5 guys at least, which it started at the China Club.
What year did you?
The China Club.
Which
5 guys
on the corner on the
20
cover
years.
of my book.
20 years ago.
20 years ago. So what year is this? So it was like the end of the 90s.
Yeah.
It
was like 98.
Okay.
So I go up to Will's. He says, finally, look, he calls me. I'm downstairs. I'm ready to go to bed. He goes,
Have you guys been playing together? Have you been jamming together? Have you been
Beatles, no.
No, but I mean, have you been doing
Oh,
any
yeah,
stuff?
we played together.
Yeah.
And he said, I got 3 other guys up here. Come up. Come on. I'm on 27. He's like on 32.
Okay.
And I said, okay. I have my slippers and pajamas on in the bathroom. I had hair then, so I didn't have a hat on. And I went upstairs, and I see these other guys that I didn't know, Frank, and they're all Italians. Rich Pagano, Frank Agnello, and Jack Petrozelli, and Will Lee.
I know Frank Agnello.
Yeah. And Yellow, Frankie the Lamb,
yeah.
right? So we go up and we sit down, and Will is spearheading this sort of conversation about we're gonna bring the records to the stage, and we're gonna do this music that they never played. It gives us kind of license to, we're not gonna play the old stuff. I Want to Hold Your Hand, but since then. We've gone backwards.
I have to say, for the encore, when you guys came out and did that stuff, it's pretty fantastic.
No, it is fantastic, and I'll get to that later. But we started with Because from Abbey Road, and we had the book, The Beatles Complete, scores, the Beatles scores, and Will throws it in front of me. He goes, "You play keyboards enough. Here, play the harpsichord part," and then Frank is writing down the vocal parts. Everybody's a great musician. People that him and Rich Pagano gathered together, because Rich and Will had been playing with Hiram Bullock, and Hiram was always late. It was a trio. So what did they do? They played like Rain, Paper. They played all these Beatle things together until Hiram got there.
Wow.
And Hiram would show up an hour late, and they had already been an hour into playing, Paperback Writer, bass and drums. And then that's where Will got the idea. He said, I found a drummer that can sing and do this.
Wow.
And then that was a prerequisite. Everybody sings, everybody plays a lot of instruments, everybody moves or jumps around from instrument to instrument.
The one guy, I'm spacing on his name.
Jack, yeah.
What?
Jack.
What's his last name?
Petrozelli. The other keyboard player, guitar player.
No.
Frank Agnello.
No. The guy who was with you now.
There's only 5 of us.
The guy who was with you in L.A., who played 9,000 different...
Oh, that's Jim Boja. Yeah, he's from Philly. He's another Italian, by the way.
Boja, yeah. He just ran around the stage playing like...
He's our 6th guy.
He's hysterical.
But he's like me. He learned like I did and Jack Petrozelli did that I got to play everything, because if I want to work, I got to play bass, I got to play guitar, play keyboard, everything, drums, play everything. I remember doing a gig when I was like 16 I just borrowed a drum kit and said, I think I can do this. And getting through the gig, playing bossa novas and swing tunes, I said, I can do it well enough, but I couldn't really, but I thought I could, and I had the chutzpah.
But you got away with it.
Yeah, so then we do Because, we work on it for about an hour, and it sounds pretty good. And that was it. We started rehearsing, we did a gig at the China Club.
That was in the late 90s?
Yeah, and then we added a couple of real string players. Because I said, we got to have, synth and real strings.
Who was playing with you back in the day?
The same string players that we have now.
Oh.
Amy and Sibel.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And then it was like horn section, so I wrote horns again, transcribed all the horns, and we had 4 horns. And
Wait, you didn't use the uptime. Who'd you use?
oh no, my brother and Tom Malone, Lou Soloff originally, you know.
Hi Tom.
And my brother and Tom Malone, and I think Tom Timko was playing baritone. Great bunch, a great bunch. It's changed a little now over the years. Lou passed away, you know. But when you're together for 20 years, we've only lost one person, you know, in 20 years, but he was a big hit for us, you know.
So he has Letterman, you have Conan.
Yeah.
How are you guys making this work?
We're working weekends. I'm still in New York, don't forget. I haven't moved yet. You know, by the time I do move, about 10 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm still running back and forth. Yeah. And I'm still doing that with those guys.
You sure are.
And we're not tired of it because we find interesting ways, like doing the George Harrison book.
Okay, so tell us about what was that
Well, we
like?
did a John Lennon show for his 70th and 75th birthday. I believe we did it twice. And for George's 70th, 5 years ago, we did George Harrison show. We don't want to do a show of Paul because he's out there working still.
Right.
And he can do his own show. He doesn't need us to do one for him. If he called and said, "Would you guys do my show?" Yes, we would do.
So when you're doing George, you're doing George's Beatles stuff, but you're also doing the stuff that
there's
comes,
so much
you're
great
doing everything
stuff.
after, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
A lot of All Things Must Pass and extra texture.
I was a George.
Yeah,
George was
we
my
love
hero.
George. You know, you know, we could even do another show of music we didn't even touch of his.
Wow.
And as much as
do you play sitar? You do, don't you?
Oh yeah, I have 3.
Yeah.
I have to because Will said. Come on, you can do it. You know.
Really?
He's like that big brother that you don't want to let down, you know. Merely because he can play, you know, like Paperback Writer and sing it at the same time.
Yes,
you know?
he can.
And it's like, okay, well then I should be able to pull this off. Just learning to play the sitar for those couple of songs.
Wow.
But I really love it. I really enjoy playing it. When I first got it and Will was there, I got the sitar and I said, this is kind of like an open blues thing. And I had to do a gig at the Town Crier with John Sebastian and John Hall. Because John Hall was running.
John Sebastian here.
John Hall was running for like Congress or something. You know, from
What?
John Hall from Orleans, right?
Okay.
And he said, we got to do a fundraiser. You and John come and we'll play. We'll just play, you know, like jug band music and blues and stuff. And I brought the sitar and I did Good Morning Little Schoolgirl on the sitar. And Will was in the audience. He goes, I said, yeah, I just got it today. He said, I figured out. He goes, well, you get to work on that Beatles stuff, man. You know, and I realized it's all blues, everything.
Okay.
You know, there's bending in it, like Albert King is the greatest sitar player in my mind. You know, that
Really?
bending, quarter tone bendings, and that there's an African scale of Asian and African, you know, quarter tones that Muddy Waters does on the slide and that Albert King does on the guitar that are, you know, linked to West Africa, where the blues comes from. That's where it comes from. And so it's all blues to me. No matter what it is. Howlin' Wolf said...
Instead of it's all rock and roll to me, it's
Howlin' Wolf said something to the effect of, people say you don't like the blues, but you're wrong. And you didn't dispute Howlin' Wolf, whatever he said. So anyway, my friend, going back to the blues and me, my friend Brian, who played bass in my little band, that 8-piece band, played, you know...
When you were 13.
When I was 13. When we got to be a little older, like 16 or 17, we'd have these parties after school. You know, somebody would bring a joint, the one joint. And Brian had the blues collection that him and his brother Ralph had collected. And we'd go and sit up in this like attic sort of place and listen to these deep records, these Muddy and Wolf and, you know, people I had never heard of, like J.B. Lenore and like Elmore James and things that the Stones were hooked into.
Right.
All the things the Stones were throwing at us, Brian had all the original versions. And he was always keen to say, yeah, you heard it by the Stones. And he would say, listen to this. And then he would do the A-B thing. And we got deep. It was so deep into it. And then Brian, after high school, ended up moving to Chicago and working with Muddy Waters. He was Muddy's guy. He took care of Muddy, and he was like a guitar player, emergency guitar player, because he was really good. And someone would invariably always miss the gig, and then Brian would play. Bob Margolin was in the band then, and Jerry Portnoy, and that classic last great Muddy Waters band. So I got many times to sit down with Muddy and to play piano with Pinetop on stage. If I gave him enough Hennessy, he'd let me come up and play.
How did you connect with Hubert? So Hubert was.
And Hubert, then Hubert.
That happen?
I was playing with Johnny Johnson at the Chicago Blues Festival. And this is how I met Hubert and Levon, like at the same time.
Okay.
I had missed the ride to Grant Park from the hotel, and I'm outside, and I said, that's Hubert Sumlin. Myself, I'm like, that's Hubert Sumlin. I know it. So I go over, Mr. Sumlin. Oh yes, son. And he was so sweet. He was so great. He was just like Pinetop Perkins. They were like the same person to me. I said, I know it's a Mississippi gentleman. And I said, Mr. Sumlin, are you going over to Grant Park? He goes, yeah, but I don't know how I'm getting there. And as we're both trying to figure out, how are we going to get to Grant Park? You didn't have Uber.
Right.
And you wouldn't get a cab to come and pick you up,
Right.
know. In Chicago, it's difficult. It's not like New York. You just go out on the street and grab a cab. So a tour bus pulls up. And the doors swing open, and smoke come out of it like Cheech and Chong. And out of the smoke, in what looked like a silver spaced running suit and wrap around Miles Davis sunglasses, was Levon Helms.
Oh my God.
Wow.
You boys need a ride over to the festival.
Wow.
Hubert's in the smoke, like, hell yeah. And they took us over, and
So that was your introduction to
well,
both of them.
because and then Butch, I got to be good friends with Butchie, who was the band's road manager. And then when I moved up to Woodstock, I lived really close to Levon. We got really tight, and that was a big. I mean, I played, of course, the first person was Phoebe Snow.
Okay, all right. Phoebe was a very good
because
friend.
Phoebe was someone I was looking over the fence at. It was only a couple of years older than me.
Okay, wait. We have to go back to how this started. You're a kid. You've got your own bands. You're going to concerts.
And then I'm working. Me and my brother. I'm playing
Where are
B3.
you working?
I'm playing B3
Okay.
at lounges with my brother.
Like what kind? Where? In Jersey?
In Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, we would play 7 nights a week. We were pulling $300 a night, $300 a week each in 1973
Which is
or
good
4.
money, yeah.
And living at my parents' house.
Okay.
Both of us.
And how old are you?
I'm 18.
Okay.
Well,
that's no shame.
I guess I'm maybe 18, 19.
Did you not go to college?
I went one semester and quit because I had those books I told you about.
Right.
And I read, and there I go, and they're handing me the books that I had when I was 14. And I'm like, I already had read this book.
Wow.
Well, this is the curriculum. I said, well, I already, so I was bored to shit. And I left. I just said, I'm going to play. Get a B3.
Okay.
Find a guitar player and a drummer and my brother on sax.
Okay.
And we'll just start playing music.
Okay.
And then we're playing in lounges, man. We're doing that, and then after that we started.
Okay, so this is 18. This is 1973.
73-4, because we graduate in June of 73.
Because I'm listening to Phoebe Snow, 71, 72.
Well, Poetry Man was huge.
Yeah.
And I was a huge Phoebe fan.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend and I love Phoebe, and she went to Newcomb College down in New Orleans, so I followed her down there for a while.
Okay.
And hung out down there and got a real dose of some real shit. That's some real deep, thick, greasy music. That's the best music coming out of America ever.
Wow.
Is right there.
Wow.
Never mind Motown, and never mind, I don't even care, Memphis or Texas was great, but New Orleans seemed to be the place where it was just so heavy, heavier than anywhere. And a lot of guys left New Orleans, and drummers like Earl Palmer ended up in LA making records, and a lot Rebenek left and came, Dr. Johnny went out to LA to play. Tulsa was another place where Leon and all those guys came. That was like New Orleans. And Chicago, of course, every city had a sound, and it's just a preference. So somebody may say, "Oh, Memphis was the best." Well, to you, yeah. To me, New Orleans was the
What was that show?
Deal.
Oh my God, El Soundman was on it. David Grohl. They went around to each city.
Yeah.
And that was a great show.
Well, they went to the studios.
They went to the studios, but they did the history of that city.
And the very last studio, the Magic Shop, is where I did most of my work in New York. That closed down, and that was really bittersweet to see that. But anyway, so Phoebe, I'm like working with my brother. We're like just working all kinds of but then finally it got to be okay. I'm just making money. I'm treading water here.
Okay.
And
are you doing original music or you?
No. And I got really tired of the B3 and all the shit, and I started to hear that I wanted to play guitar, and I'm like, by the time I'm 22, I want to start playing guitar. So, and it doesn't matter when you play. We see 5-year-old geniuses that picked it up for 1 year. So it doesn't matter. It's the amount of time you put into it, not how young or how many years.
This is your edu-tainment.
Well, no, because anybody who concentrates on anything can do great. They can do it. So I quit. I just went to. My father went to high school with Bucky Pizzarelli, who was a great guitar player, played on the Tonight Show. His son John Pizzarelli, genius, and his and the bass player, the other son too. They're all like just Martin, bass player. The Pizzarellis are from Totowa, where my father grew up. They went to high school. He called me. He said, can you take my son? He said, well, I'm too busy. Have him go see Joe Cinderella, another Italian. Pizzarelli. Italian guitar players in New Jersey, all the jazz guitar. So I studied with Harry Leahy, Jack Wilkins, Joe. I went to see as much jazz guitar, and then I said, I'm not playing jazz guitar. I'm playing guitar, just guitar. I'm going to figure out what to do. And then started playing guitar, and I started going into the city. And it's late, man. I'm like late going into the city, living in Hasbrook Heights, taking the tunnel, going in, hanging out at JP's uptown where everybody was. That's where I met Al Cooper, Harry Nilsson, Bobby Kennedy Jr., the weirdest people, Peter O'Toole hanging out in there. It was like a tiny China club.
Really?
Yeah, shit was going on in the basement.
What year was that? Was like 74-ish?
No. Now it's
it's older.
79. This is when punk is happening.
Okay.
78, 79. I meet Al Cooper, and I start playing with Phoebe's hanging out there, picking up a band of people that I know from Jersey. So I started playing with Phoebe.
Were the Contis playing with her back then?
No, later. So I'm playing with Phoebe, and then some of us are playing with Al. Them are playing with Al Cooper at the same time, and this is where and we're all playing the bottom line. And Al needed a guitar player, a keyboard player, one night. So Louis, who played with Phoebe with me, said, "Al, get Jimmy to play piano and organ. When you play guitar, he'll play keyboards." So I did. I had a great gig with Al. And then a couple months later, the guitar player who plays with Phoebe couldn't make Al's gig, and he sends me. And Al says, "You're a keyboard player." I said, "So are you."
Nice.
So we got to be best friends,
Nice.
So I'm working at the bottom line a lot, and this is where.
Where does Laura Nyro come into this?
She comes in after Leader of the Pack and Darlene Love and Ronnie Spector. And
how did that happen?
That happened because I was playing at the bottom line. I was doing these shows for Cousin Brucey, backing up Rick Derringer, and what was the one that got the singer from here we go. We're having one of those moments.
This is your first. I've had 20 of them.
No, from Paul Revere and the Raiders, Mark Lindsay. Great.
I saw him last year.
Great, and Chubby Checker and everybody. I mean, anybody coming through, I was backing them up.
Wow.
And that was a gig at the bottom line, and Alan Pepper got to know me. So when Ellie Greenwich came in to do her show and talk to Alan recommended me. And Ellie was like, "I don't know, I don't know him, So I said, "You do know me, because when were writing songs for Patti Smythe before Scandal, before she had her deal.
Wow.
I was the guitar player on the sessions with Lee Shapiro, who was Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, who I went to high school with. So Lee calls Ellie and says, yeah, you know Jimmy, yeah. Oh yeah, oh Jim, yeah. I forgot. She said, well, you got to talk to Paul Shaffer because we want him to work on the show too. He would be the music director and you could be the arranger. I said, great, that's what I love. I want to work with Paul, I want to meet him. So I go up to the Gramercy Park Hotel where Paul lives, by the way. He comes in from Canada, right? Saturday Night Live. And he has a romantic notion of America where you live in a hotel, like Duke Ellington. So Paul, I go up there, and Paul is up there, and Harry Shearer's on the couch. They're sitting there. When you walk into Paul's apartment or room at the Gramercy Park, you open the door, and the couch is facing, looking like right at you. And they're sitting on there, and they have a Superman lunchbox. And inside the lunchbox is not lunch.
Yeah.
So we didn't have lunch. We had not lunch.
You had not lunch.
And then I handed Paul a stack of charts that I did. And he looks at him and goes, yeah, fine. He goes, I don't do horns. You do the horns. I'll do the rhythm section. You're hired.
Wow.
I said, oh, great.
Just like, do you know who you were?
He didn't know me from Adam.
Come on.
He's my mentor, though. He's the guy that got me started. Something clicked. He looked at the work, and we talked about it a little bit. And
What year is this?
Oh, I'm imagining, I think it's 80.
Okay.
81 maybe, latest. So we do that off-Broadway show. We have Darlene Love, you know. And,
What off-Broadway show?
Leader of the Pack.
Oh, okay.
We do it at the bottom line. Carla DeVito, remember?
Yeah, and they're
Rory
my Facebook
Dodd,
friends. Robbie Benson and
Rory
Carla.
Dodd, who
Yeah,
sang with Meatloaf, and you know, just this great Annie, you know.
Wow.
Oh my God, Annie from the Shirts, you know. Oh God, Annie Golden. Oh,
I love Annie. I know
Annie Golden
I
was
love Annie
the
Golden.
greatest. She was in there with Ula Hedwig and Patty Darcy. Oh my God, it was a great show. And so I did the charts, and Paul played piano and, you know, taught me so much about. He said, if you play it, if you listen to the record and you get the bass and drums right first, and then build it. And I was used to listening things from the top down.
Okay.
Strings and horns, vocals, all that. But I found out from Paul that it really comes from, music comes from underneath, it comes from the bass and drums.
Kids, this is
Yeah,
edutainment.
it's the bass and drums. And he so kindly had a way that I hope that I adapted, where if he would listen to something that I wrote, and then he would say, did you hear this? I thought I heard this in there. And then he would like straighten it out for me, and I go, yeah, you know. I go, yeah. I guess I didn't not eat from the lunchbox enough.
Yeah,
He was hearing things, but he was so. See, Paul
That's
is
a
like,
really nice way to teach.
you know, the way George R.R. Martin says he lived in Bayonne as a kid and looked out towards New York, and all of that Game of Thrones shit came into his head because he's fantasized about this magical land. Paul was like that from Canada, thinking about American music, and you know, and he loved the record so much, like so many Canadians, like Neil Young and a lot of other people had come down, and Joni Mitchell, and like the Stones, people from England, they just appreciate what we take for granted. You know, and that's always been the case. We've been shown our own reflection, you know, by these great artists who really were weaned on American records or U.S. records, because Canadians don't like to not be called Americans.
Is that so?
Yes, it is so. They are Americans. They are. They're North Americans.
North Americans.
No, they are.
They call themselves Americans?
Oh, the U.S. they call us. The U.S.
Okay.
They're North Americans.
Okay.
I worked up there a lot. I know. They're great people.
Okay.
I almost considered moving there.
Really?
Yeah, just last year.
Well, that's a whole nother story.
One time, but I had a real high draft number, you know, but I would have gone because my father would not have let me get away with
What was your number? We were just talking
it was
about
really
this with
high in the
someone.
300s. You know?
Oh, wow.
But you know, that war wasn't what we're dealing with now at all. You know, that war was a tragedy, a terrible thing. And the veterans didn't get the respect they deserve from coming home from that, you know, and we hope they do now, but then they didn't. They didn't. But anyway, so I'm working the bottom line all the time, doing that show with Shaffer. I even took it to Broadway, and so I did that. And then I was playing with Laura.
Laura
didn't come yet. I'm playing with Phoebe, rather.
Laura.
I was playing with Phoebe all the time. And I played with Benny King a lot, you know, a lot of stuff at the Lone Star. And then I got a call with Ronnie Spector, who was working. We're putting something together with Felix Cavaliere and John Sebastian, two of my favorite people. Records that, first of all, the Rascals.
Yeah.
That
Gene
was
Cornish is
the Rascals were the guys who made little Italian kids like me figure we can do that too, because the Rascals were just fabulous and
Yes, they were.
Just blue-eyed soul. And then John was another Pugliese, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, he speaks fluent Italian.
Well,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
his father was the world-class John Pugliese.
He had like blonde hair.
Red, but his father, they're from Abruzzese, you know. So his father was the world-class harmonica player with orchestras.
Really?
He played with Segovia, you know,
Wow.
duets with. Anyway, Sebastian, and they're putting this thing together called Deja Vu. All right. Sid Vintage and Joel Gallen's on it. Joel Gallen is like a road manager. Joel Gallen is the guy who later because Joel later put Unplugged together for MTV.
Okay.
So I met Joel Gallen as Felix's road manager. So we go and we do this thing, NRBQ's on it, you know, and I'm playing with all the bands. So me and Sebastian got to be really good friends, and Felix. So then I started working with Felix.
And this is like.
This is, I don't know, 84,
Okay.
you know, and I something like that, 83 or 4, and I started working with Felix and John a lot. They, of course, have this connection with Laura Nyro, both of them. You know, Felix produced Christmas in the Beads of Sweat.
Wow,
John
I
knew
didn't know
her.
that.
John knew her from the Bronx, from way back, you know. She was a kid from Bill Graham, 16 years old at the Fillmore.
And so how old is she now?
She's in her 40s,
Okay.
maybe, you know.
So
she's
this is like at the end of her career.
Well, you know, Roscoe Herring, who was who was Sebastian's road manager, a good friend, he said, Lorelei, we called her Lorelei, is looking to put a band together. I gave her your name. So I call her on the phone.
Cute.
I call Laura, she picks up the phone. The goddess, the voice that makes you melt, I don't care who you
I
are.
have goosebumps now while you talk
Just
about
speaking
her.
on the phone. Hi, Jimmy. Can you come to Connecticut? So I'm going to come and see you play first, she said. And then if I like you, you should come to Connecticut and we could talk. So I'm playing the Lone Star, and I see Roscoe. Roscoe's really tall with gray hair. You know,
Who are you playing with?
I'm playing with Benny King that
Okay.
night. She's and Doc Pomus is sitting. It's like rock and roll dream. There's Doc Pomus, Benny King. You know, he's Gray, me and David Keys and a couple other people. And I don't see Laura. All I see is this hooded sweatshirt, like next to Roscoe. Like almost like just like incognito, but nobody would know her anyway. But she was just like didn't like being there. But she liked the show because she loved singing, loved Benny King. Then I got the call to go to Connecticut. So I go up to Connecticut. Roscoe takes me up there because I'm living in Queens in some dump, you know.
Were you a Laura Nyro fan when you were a kid?
Oh,
my God.
Because, and here we go again. This is back to me reading the record. Charlie Colello is producing and doing the charts.
Okay.
Charlie Colello did the charts that for that Blood, Sweat, and Tears album I love so much with Al. And he also produced the charts for the records for all of the Four Seasons stuff that I listened to as a kid. So this is all like coming together.
Right.
And Laura Nyro, by the way, it's Jewish Italian. She's both. She has double guilt. So I go up to her place, and it's this great spread in Connecticut. There's this beautiful stone farmhouse and a studio, like way bigger than this place, with like a beautiful Steinway in it. And we go in the house, and nobody's in there. Roscoe's looking for her. He goes, you know, she doesn't come in here much. Let's go up to the little house. So there's like this Japanese, like little Japanese cottage set back on the property. So we go up this little stone pathway, and it's getting very weird now because we open the door and there's nothing in there but you ever seen the Japanese pillow that looks like a brick. It looks like a brick.
Oh, a pillow. Yeah.
Right? It's like a bamboo mat and a brick and one chair, a lot like your chair. That's for me. She's sitting on the mat. Her dog Emmy is with her, and I have a chair. So I'm sitting in the middle of the room in a chair like this, and she's sitting over there across the room, way across the room from me. And she gets up, and she sachets the way only she could over to me and hands me a paper plate. I look at the paper plate.
Yeah.
The paper plate, and there's her ideas are written on the paper plate, but from the inside out like this, right?
What do you mean
Spiraling.
from the inside out?
The first word is on the point in the middle. In the middle of where the dot would be, right in the middle of the paper plate. The word my vision, and it's going for this, and I'm like turning this plate and leading. I said, this is so fucking bizarre. And then I get to the end of it, and you know, in it it's about harmony, mostly. It's beautiful. I wish I had it. I wish I don't know what happened.
Wow.
She didn't want me to have it. She wanted me to read it and keep it.
Right.
We didn't do that then. We didn't say, hey, can I take a picture of that and put it on Instagram? We didn't do that. Or it wasn't like you meet Laura, hey, let's take a selfie. We're so fucking rude today. It's horrible.
Are there pictures of you with Laura?
Yeah, there's some people will send me them. I did a gig recently in Boston, and somebody said, this was 30 years ago, exactly to this day that you played with Laura in Boston, and they gave me the picture, and it was really great. And so
Well, so
then,
how-
and
okay,
it's
so
about
she-
harmony. It's
So
about,
wait, so she gives you the vision.
and I read it, and
Yeah.
and the big part of the vision is a band with everyone sings,
Okay.
and it's 3 women and 3 men.
Like it.
So it's going to be Nydia Mata, who was in a band called Isis. Remember them?
Mm-hmm.
They were all girls, all women. They weren't
Thank you.
girls; they were
Thank
women,
you.
and they were women. And they had Nydia on percussion, and Diane Wilson was just a singer, and Diane Wilson, and she was like on harmony, and Laura. And Dave Wofford on bass, who played with Spyro Gyra.
Yes.
Really
I knew
great.
him from New York.
Jersey, I know. Dave Wofford. And Frank Pagano on drums, who I played with in high school in that band when I was 13. And myself on guitar and singing. So really
Did you bring him in?
I brought Frank in and Dave. I brought Wofford. I said to Frank, he said, we got to get Wofford, you know, because I knew Wofford from clubbing around, you know, playing really great bass player. And the right vibe, because I knew Laura was really, you know, we tried out bass players at one point, and she would like leave the room. And some women who expected to get the gig, and Laura would just get up and leave the room.
Wow.
She goes, oh, she just made me so uncomfortable. Or some guy who just wouldn't, you know, just wouldn't get it. She knew it, you know what? And Dave came in, and she was like, oh, you know, he's calming, but he plays. And he played perfectly for her, because she is probably the only artist I've ever worked with. Because
wow, that's a
artist,
really that's a
with
big
a capital
statement.
A.
That's a big statement.
Yeah, but there's very few that come along.
That's a big statement.
There are very few that are just because an artist. What qualifies you as an artist and not a performer is that you don't care about sales. You don't care about tickets. You don't care. We'd be driving through, and she'd say, let's stop the bus here and let's go. And then let's just walk around this town. And she would say, don't you think we could all live here? You know, she had this like other dream-like quality, you know, and she composed, but didn't write it down ever. You know, it was stream of consciousness with her playing.
And she
sit at the piano,
remembered.
but she had. I don't even know if she knew what a note was. You know, if this was a D flat or a C or. Well, she knew. She put her hands on the piano and music came out naturally. It's some of the greatest music I ever heard. It's the most. And I discussed this with people about Hubert Sumlin and other players that it's heart to hand, and the head really doesn't come into it. And she could sing a Carole King song like Up on the Roof and you would think it was hers. That's a great artist too.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that's a Sinatra Elvis.
Her version of Eli's Coming.
Eli's Coming, yeah.
Holy
well, that's her
shit.
song.
Oh, that's right. They took it from her.
They took it from
right.
her.
They took it from her.
And When I Die was, her
version of When I Die. Oh my God. Yeah.
A lot of people are saying hello.
Who's saying hello?
Hello.
Tell us while he's tuning up.
We've got.
Oh God, I know so many people watching right now. Hi Jam Madnick. Hi David Farrell. Who's playing? Who else? Who's saying hello?
We got Eric Morrell.
Okay.
Hey Jimmy. We got Scott France.
Hi John Green. Hi Scott. Do you know Scott from New York? Scott Krantz.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey Scott.
Scott and Mark.
We got Robert Owen.
Oh, and I mentioned a Lone Star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys were there that
I
night,
know.
probably.
I know Scott from Stand Up New York and then from True Blue. Yeah.
We got Rob Lee.
Mason Reese is on. Hey Mason.
Hey, Mason.
I'm sure Will's watching. Hi Bob Shaffer.
I hope Mason's still playing the drums.
Joey Cole is watching.
Yeah.
You know, Mason used to play for me. He'd bring in the Lebanon horn players, and that's how I met Bruce Kapler and Al Shez and stuff.
Mason's one of the good people.
Mason is a good people, and I think he played drums recently, and he hadn't played in a long time, but I think he just played recently somewhere.
Well, Laura, anyway.
Okay, yeah, let's.
You know, we always had this thing about taking and When I Die back. Because of what Blood, Sweat, and Tears had done to it. And this is when I say Laura's an artist. She never made a dime on her records or her version of anything.
Really?
You know, everything was covered. Barbra Streisand covering Stony End,
Right.
Wedding Bell Blues, The Fifth Dimension, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and When I Die, Eli's Common, Three Dog Night.
But Lucky and Louie are my two favorite songs. That beginning of that album, Lucky and Louie. Oh my God.
So I had recorded this.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of dying. Don't really care if it's peace, pride, and love. Time be near, time be near, time be near. Peace, pride, and die. Time near. Just bottle up my coffee. Calm down there. When I die, when I'm gone, watch out for, watch out for, watch out for the world to carry on, carry on. Like that, yeah.
I love
And
that.
I said it's
I
like
love
a
that
Sun,
version.
it's like a Sun House song to me.
I mean, the slide,
It's
the whole
blues.
Cajun.
No, see, it's all blues. It's all blues. It's all Delta blues to me. So I could turn anything into backwards into Delta blues.
That's pretty fabulous.
But and Laura never got to hear that, you know. But working with her every night was wonderful. It was great. It was.
Did she do versions of her own stuff?
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine.
No,
she
that's
did
all
the
we
same
did.
every
All
night.
we did, and then a couple of covers.
No, but I mean, did she change up her own stuff? Or...
Well, she had this thing where she would just, could just go stream of conscious like a jazz player, and move things along. It was a heads up kind of thing. Will had worked with her on an album called Nested, and he had this great story. He said, "Yeah, Laura." Because we're recording, Terry Silverlight's playing drums, really good, Laura, and Will. And we can't get the recording in that house in Connecticut. We can't get the take. And Laura stops the session and says, Will, come outside with me. And she points to a wicker chair on the porch and says, can you make the bass sound like that? And I said, Will, if you didn't get that, I know exactly what she means. I know exactly. I know because I read the paper plate.
Did Will?
Will didn't read the paper plate.
Did Will know what that meant?
He didn't know at all. But
so
I think he just said okay and probably played less. You know what I mean? Probably figured okay. That means simple. Yeah. Yeah, and he was probably right that's what she meant. Make it sound like that chair. She wanted it to sound like home, like comfortable, like a wicker chair, not like we can play. But there were things she did want to be complicated. She had one thing called Roll the Ocean with Chuck Rainey on bass and Steve Gadd on drums. That was just, her part was really simple. And those guys were back there like, just, it was beautiful. And it never was released for a long time. She just played the demo for me, and then we decided to start doing it live. And it's on we made that one live album at the bottom line.
Now, how would she work with you guys? Did she let you do your thing? Did she direct you?
No direction. The same with Levon and the guys in the band.
Okay.
Because I was so used to being Shaffer, like saying, okay, everybody do this. That we had that
control.
Jack Nishi, Phil Spector kind of idea that everybody's got to have their little box to make their record. But this was creating more than that. She wanted the personalities of the players to come out. So, I once worked with Hank Williams Jr., who I dearly love. I think he's just great, And he had a great saying, if somebody would play something, and tried it, and he'd hear us talking, and I'd say, well, I think it's a 7 maybe with a flat 9, and he would say, I don't know what you call it, but that ain't it. And that, and James Brown used to say, don't play no college chords. Now, Joel Gallen, who we talked about, he was Felix's road manager when I was on the road with Felix Cavaliere. And after we parted ways, we stayed friends. And I said, listen, man, I know you're doing things with Sid and you're coming up with MTV. If anything ever comes up with James Brown, I will carry guitars. I'll bring water to the stage. I will pay you to have me there. So 3 years later, whatever, he calls me. He says, remember what you said? I said, what? He goes, yeah, about James Brown. I said, what? He said, yeah, you said you would carry your guitar cases and stuff. So I don't want you to do that. But I have this thing we're doing in Detroit because Aretha Won't Fly. And you can find it on YouTube, I think. It's called Cinemax. It was for Cinemax. He was getting into cable, Joel. This is before MTV Unplugged.
Okay.
He's going to do a thing called a soul session with James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, Joe Cocker. At the time, Billy Vera had a big record. He's on it. Robert Palmer's on it.
Wow.
Right? And what the idea
what
is...
What year is this?
You can look it up. I don't know, 80... Maybe 87, something like that, And we're going to go to Detroit. He said, I'll give you $500 if you do the charts. And you can, carry your own guitar, but you're not going to play. He says, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. I'm going to bring you to Detroit because Aretha Won't Fly. We have to do it in Detroit. Because you're going to do the charts for the whole show. And you're going to teach James Brown's band how to play all this material like Addicted to Love and When a Man Loves a Woman, all the songs that they don't know.
Right.
Everybody's thing was going to be to do a song.
And it was all James's band.
James is Mr. Brown.
Mr.
James. Mr. Brown.
Mr.
It was
Brown?
Mr. Brown's band.
Okay.
And it's in Detroit. Maceo's on it, Charles Sherrill, who was now music director, used to be the bass player in the band. I think Melvin Parker and John Morgan were the two drummers. That's key, you'll see. Like 4 horns or 5 horns, 2 drummers, 2 guitars. Jimmy Nolan was still there, my favorite James Brown guitar player. And we'll go to Detroit. I do the charts. I get together with Maceo. I'm running all day before all the horns. I get together with Joe Cocker in the bar. We got to figure out what key he's going to do When a Man Loves a Woman.
What was that like?
Well, first of all, we had to drink. So we weren't going to be sober around Joe.
Okay, I want to hear about Joe.
So Joe, was the sweetest man ever. And so there's a piano.
The drunkest man, I'm assuming, also.
Well, he could carry it the way a lot of Englishmen can carry that. He carried himself well.
You had a meeting with Peter.
Oh yeah. Well, he was a brilliant man. So, and we sat there just like a bar in the corner, a piano, and not a lot of people there in the hotel. So I start playing When a Man Loves a Woman. Joe, when a he's singing like the only Joe could sing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says,
John
higher.
Belushi.
He says, higher.
Mm-hmm.
Do it higher. Well, Ray Charles, right? I'm going higher and higher. No, I want another half step. Okay. I said, Joe, when are you going to know? He goes, well, when it hurts right here, I'll know we're in the right key. And I said, okay. Finally, we got up to, whatever key we got up to. And he was killing it, and he looked like he was in absolute pain. Like, just like.
Well, he always looked like he was in pain.
So great. And he was and everyone was gonna sing a song and a song with James Brown, a duet.
Wow.
So it comes around time for Aretha and Mr. Brown.
What did Joe and Mr. Brown sing?
I can't remember.
Okay, all right.
But I know that that Aretha was, they do two together.
Okay.
And the best part was when James Brown did This Is a Man's World. Mm-hmm. And Aretha busted in with Do Right Woman. Like we medleyed them. And she's singing at him, if you want to do right.
You said this is This is
if you can find it on YouTube, maybe. It's what was called a soul session.
A soul session,
with James Brown.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, we get there, and I'm there early, and rehearsing Mr. Brown's band.
Mr. Brown's band.
We're rehearsing Addicted to Love with Robert Palmer, and who I worked with also after that again.
Okay.
I loved him. I think he was a secret agent. I really do. I think he was James Bond. I think Robert Palmer really. He walked in a room with a martini and a scarf all the time. Like he just got off a Learjet or something.
And he always had
He was
that
the
look.
classiest guy. He had a villa in Italy where he lived. He didn't live anywhere but in a villa in Italy. Or he may have been a Bond villain even. He could have been. So we're saying Robert Palmer's singing, and he's just really just a great soul singer. And I got both drummers going. We broke this part up from the record. We're loving it. And I get a tap on the shoulder, and Charles Sherrill, Mr. Brown's music director, says, Mr. Brown wants to talk to you. I said, is he here? He says, turn around. And he's standing there like this, little scarf here, glasses. He looks, his hair's perfect. It's James Brown, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown.
I step off the stage and walk over.
Are you freaking?
No, I'm trying to be cool.
You're trying, but
and
are you freaking?
He says to me, he got his hand. It's great the way he's standing, because I don't know if you can see this, but he's standing like this, body language, like he wants to be cool, but something's bugging him. So he says to me, "How come you got both drummers playing?" I said, "Because we have two." He says, "Not supposed to. Not supposed to both be playing at one time." I go, "Mr. Brown, if I may, why do we have two drummers?" "Well, because when one gets tired, the other one picks up the beat without missing a beat." I said, "Oh," then he says to me, "But you can use two drummers, not my music though. For this music, not for my music." I said, "I have nothing to say about your music, sir. I'm just trying to," and you have to be careful with him. I didn't want to say teach his band.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
I said, "I'm just trying to take you guys through this."
That was smart.
Yeah. So that Mr. Palmer, it was Mr. Everybody. The respect, and he was that's a very smart thing. Mm-hmm. The guys in his band that were called Boy or whatever, all their lives, that were treated so bad, he demanded, almost like the New York Times, they'll call a murderer, Mr. Manson, they put that Mr. And he put the Mr., he insisted that we all called everybody Mr.
You gave me goosebumps.
Everybody in his band, Mr. Johnny Griggs, Mr. Maceo Park.
And when he introduced them,
Mr. Brother Mr. No, they were Brother Mr.
Okay.
So anyway, he says to me, you can use both drummers on this because it sounds pretty good, but it's not my music. It's not mine. No, it's not your music, sir. I'm just trying to, make something happen for Mr. Palmer. He goes, "Well, it sounds good." So, and then I'm like, oh my God, what's he, that's James Brown. He is the best arranger in the world, and I met him years later when I was doing the Conan show. He came in. It was funny, after he was let out, and he was making that last trip. Mm-hmm. after his incarceration there for whatever the hell happened. I don't know. But we had dressing rooms at Conan that were like the size of a jail cell, prison cell. He would not sit in that room. He sat outside in the hallway.
Wow.
From the minute he got there and signed autographs and took pictures but he would not go in that room. He was like, he was stir crazy in there.
Wow.
And he came in the band room when we were rehearsing. And he's picked up.
You?
Oh yeah. He was a brilliant, and he picked up every instrument, and just played to show everybody. He was a natural teacher.
Wow.
And he wanted everybody to know that it all came from him. I mean, there was an ego thing that he merited. He really did. Everything we know, we cannot, and I had this discussion with Steve Jordan and other great drummers, we cannot trace the funk that he came up with to before him. We say we hear some of that in New Orleans music. We say we might hear some of it in jazz, but no, that, cutting up the time thing that, Jabbo Starks and Clyde Stubblefield did with James Brown came from him. That came from James Brown, because he came out of straight R&B, Five Royales, Lowland Pauling, King Records in the 50s, but when Cold Sweat came out, that was like, what is that? That's like, there's not a record, there's not a beat, that beat doesn't exist anywhere.
Has anybody ever asked him where that came from?
Well, he would say it came from James Brown. Wouldn't he?
Yeah, I guess so.
Naturally, it came from me,
And it did.
And it did. And those are the moments when, we didn't have, again, there's no,
Yeah.
but we remember these things. And it's like, again, people stepping out of your record collection, and he was as wonderful as you could imagine. Where I don't know what it would be like to work for him, but it would be an honor to work for him, and you would learn something. And I must say, even Ike Turner, in meeting Ike Turner the first time, because Ike Turner, was, regardless of all the hoo-ha later and all the crap with Tina, he was one of the most important people in the music business. When he went through the South, he came out of St. Louis. He played piano on Rocket 88, Jackie Branson, arguably the first rock and roll record. He was an A&R guy and found Howlin' Wolf. He found a whole bunch of guys in Memphis. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and brought him up to Chess Records. And he was like James Brown in running a band and arranging and knowing music. These guys were the earlier Quincy Joneses of the world, these guys made shit happen on records. Ike Turner plays lead guitar on Otis Rush's, Double Trouble, his big record, or All Your Love. It's All Your Love, I believe, yeah. Not Double Trouble, that's Otis Rush. But on the first one, the first single, he's playing lead guitar because, in those days, if somebody comes in and they can't really sing and play at the same time, you got Ike Turner's producing the record, and you can tell when you hear that vibrato thing on the Strat. Ike was a wild guitar player, man. So James Brown, we do that, and then
was it a great show?
It's a great show.
It's because it sounds insane.
Everybody had tuxedos on.
Oh.
Wilson Pickett singing Cold Sweat with James Brown, it was just really...
Wow. I'm finding that tonight.
The best part about Wilson Pickett was we get there, and I so loved Wilson Pickett. If you could wish you could sing like anybody, it would be Wilson Pickett. He was the baddest, man. And he gets there, and Joel says, you got to call Pickett. He's a Francois Lafarge. Call the desk and ask for Francois Lafarge. So, okay. Well, a lot of people use pseudonyms when they check in. So I come to find out why he's not Wilson Pickett that day.
Okay.
He said, listen, man, you gotta tape my stuff at dress rehearsal the day before the gig. I can't be there for the gig. So I called the producer. I said, did you know that Pickett's gonna leave? He's wants his stuff done Friday? And and because I said, what? And they said, yeah, we know. We gotta do a special taping for him on Friday. I said, what's going on? He goes, well, the Marshalls after him.
Oh my God.
He had child support to play in Detroit. He didn't want to come to Detroit. He came for Aretha. He came for James Brown. He came into a danger zone.
Wow.
Because he thought it was a great idea for these three that never worked together. That can never happen again. You know, and with all due respect, it's not the same as you know, John Legend and I don't know who, Rihanna, and it's not the same as three of those people getting together today. These people created legend. They were the best, three of the best singers. Aretha Franklin, there's nobody ever, you know, I would argue Billie Holiday with Aretha Franklin any day because of her piano playing, because of just her thing. She changed it. That people took it, you know, she's like the way Hendrix changed guitar. She changed singing. Her and Stevie Wonder. They changed it into what, unfortunately,
did you work
now,
with Stevie?
Only on some private stuff. That was great. We did some things for in a church in LA, and my friend Michael Peters, who was a choreographer, I was working with him.
Were
He
you
was
dancing?
working on it. No, but I was a music director. You know, and we had a church and a choir, and you know, and Stevie came over to play, and I'm like, oh God. I was sitting there, and I'm on, you know, sitting on the piano bench, and he's playing, and I'm like, oh my God. You know, I'm not telling him anything. And he's got the choir going, and Michael Peters was there. And Michael Peters, you know, choreographed Beat It and all that stuff with Michael Jackson. So it was one of those, it was a private thing in LA, and church singers, you know. I had, at one point, picked up a tambourine and put it down really quick because these women in the church were playing this tambourine like it's a masterful instrument there.
Wow.
They had it, like, I think they had road cases for them, you know. or they were hat boxes. I wasn't sure, but it could have been either. Stevie Wonder that was first time I saw him. Remember the Capitol Theater in, not in Passaic, in New Jersey, where Fagan's from.
Yeah. Where Fagan's from.
I went there
I've seen,
to
I saw
see Stevie
concerts
Wonder.
there,
I think it was 71 maybe. And Stevie Talking Book wasn't out yet. So.
Okay, wait. I saw him, little Stevie Wonder, open for the Stones at Madison Square Garden.
No, he was Stevie Wonder by then.
Yeah.
He wasn't little. But that's after this.
But that was right
That's
before.
72.
That's right
yeah.
before.
That's when Talking Book came out, right
It was,
then.
it was before
Yeah.
Talking
and
Book.
And that's what made him the Stones
Yes.
tour. But the year before that,
Yeah.
he's playing the Capitol Theater. The place is half filled, and the Butterfield Blues Band is better. Paul Butterfield's Better Days is opening up, and I really went to see Stevie. I didn't expect to see Paul, and it was great. Amos Garrett on guitar, Jeff Moldar. The band was like Sam Bourne, I think, was in the band. And Stevie Wonder was killing it, man. And there was that gap that I went back and filled in of little Stevie Wonder, you know, that ends like somewhere around, you know, Signed, Sealed, Delivered. And then there's these other great albums that come up, Where I'm Coming From, and Music of My Mind, and then Talking Book, and then Intervisions. That really starts with from Signed, Sealed, and Delivered on. That's where it starts. Him and Marvin Gaye took control of their careers and of music. You know, they broke that factory mold from Motown. That was exciting times. Earth, Wind and Fire was coming around. The soul and funk. You know, Sly was around, and if he showed up, and that was great to me though. Sly was.
Did you work with him?
No, never got to meet Sly. But when I was a kid, that was them and the Chambers Brothers were like integrated bands, man. That was unheard of. Think about it in 66, 65. You know, there were people coming around, and it was now Bill Graham was doing things at Mike Bloomfield's behest, who said, we're not playing, the Butterfield Band's not playing unless you get B.B. King to open for us. Who's B.B. King? Paul, you know.
Wow.
You got to get him. And Albert King then. You got to get Albert King in here. And then we started, the residual effect of us seeing these things, you know, Albert King and B.B. King. You know, I saw a show at the Fillmore where the Geils Band plays, and then Albert King plays, and then the Allman Brothers play.
I was there.
Yeah.
I was
71.
there.
Idlewild South was the album. The live album didn't come out yet.
Shit.
They had recorded the live album a couple months before, and it hadn't come out yet. But I remember Geils Band. They were like a punky bar blues band. They weren't the band that we knew later. They were this incredible band. Man. And then Albert King comes on. Who's going to go on? The Allman Brothers go on after that. I'm sure that they felt like we shouldn't. He should close the show.
Yeah.
And that's how Bloomfield always felt too. But they did it anyway. They once again had to show us where we came from, where they came from, where the music came from, and that's been a part of everything for me is the connection to the blues. No matter what it is, I'll find it in a Beatles song. I can find it anywhere. It's just the thread that runs through everything, and it runs through jazz too. And I can have an argument with certain musicians saying that jazz came first, but even Miles Davis would say the blues is what jazz came from, and Louis Armstrong would say it's gut bucket blues and then it turns into jazz, because it's music from West Africa that got to the fields, that got to the churches, that when African Americans got instruments, they played what they knew. They play and also assimilated. There's stories of African Americans working on plantations that got their hands on a violin and could just play Mozart shit when they heard it. They could just do it. That's the thing. The thing we don't understand is that old souls are reincarnated in musicians. We see it all the time. How does that kid Brandon Niederhauer play like that? That's like as young as he is. How did Derek Trucks pick up the guitar when it was so much bigger than him and sound like Dwayne Allman, right away? B.B. King was like 11 or 10 or something when he picked up a guitar and he could play it, I think that there's old souls running through some people, and a lot of us have to work hard at it, and some people have to hardly work at it, but that's the genius.
All right, so Jimmy, we're getting so tell us everything that's going on with you now, and then I want you to play us out. But so what you've got so many projects. So Conan's going to.
We're going a half-hour show. We won't have a band on the air anymore. I'm still music director. In fact, today before I got here, I write music cues.
But who's playing the music?
Me.
Okay. In
the studio.
Are you doing guitar? Are you doing piano?
Guitar, piano, bass, drums,
everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
And just,
So it's pre-recorded.
Pre-recorded.
Okay.
So it's wraparounds and bumpers, walk-ons, comedy bits, which it's what most of my day was for the last 25 years. I would come in the morning and write music and record music and work with the writers. And then we'd play live on the air for an hour, the last hour of my day. The other 7 hours of my day are what I'm doing now. So it's kind of the same thing, but I have more freedom to do, I'm going to be doing more festivals and shows. And
so who are you doing?
I'm touring a bit with Bob Margolin, my old friend from Muddy's band that I love so much.
And what kind of stuff are you guys doing?
Blues, just the two of us, 2 guitars, 200 stories, and just playing, like Muddy and Jimmy Rogers together, and probably going to make some shit up too while we're out there.
That's good.
Fab Four keeps me busy. I work with the Upper West Music Group. We just did, that's Greg Williamson and Nicole Richter, who are up in New York City, and we just did a thing down in New Orleans, which I told you about, with Ziggy Marley and
Tell them.
Oh my God, Taj Mahal, Alan Stone. If you don't know Alan Stone, man, check out Alan Stone and Irma Thomas, who originally recorded "Time Is on My Side."
Wow.
We did that with her, and of course Ivan Neville, Cyril Neville, George Porter from the Meters, Annie DeFranco. Oh my God. Just forget it. She's
I haven't seen her in a long time.
So great. Anyway, I don't know if I left anybody out, but that was just last week. Before that, we did in LA. We did a nice. We finally got the Blues Foundation and the Americana Society together to do a benefit, and that show we had John Prine on, and that was just.
I saw
Bob
the
Weir.
ad. You did that in LA.
Yeah.
I saw the ad.
John Prine, Bob Weir, and Doyle Bramall, Joe Louis Walker.
Was it recorded?
No, we don't do these to record them.
Yeah.
And Shamika Copeland, who I know from when she's a baby. Larkin Poe, and if you don't know,
I don't know.
you got to check out Larkin Poe. My God, these two sisters from Georgia are just fabulous, man. I met him through Elvis Costello. He said, "You got to come, Jimmy. You got to come. I'm doing my solo gig, you know, like just me. We'll come and play, but I want you to mostly meet these girls that are opening my show." He goes, "And then they'll play with me later in the show." And I go there. And
Larkin Poe?
Larkin, Larkin.
Larkin.
Poe.
Okay.
The Lovell sisters.
Okay.
Yeah, Rebecca and Megan
they're great.
from Georgia.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
Oh, they're really great.
Yeah.
Now, they were just alone with Elvis, and she had like a bass drum and a guitar, and Megan plays the lap steel. They play with a band, too, with their own band, but together, the two of them were they're so great. They're going to be coming on so strong now.
Wow.
You know, I'm trying to think. Oh, Slash was on the show, too. But then again, I always call him at the last minute and say, "You want to come?"
Do you?
Yeah. And, he's become one of the real people that you wouldn't imagine. Just the sweetest, nicest person and great guitar player. And I love blowing people's minds when they think that they like to bag people. And he comes out, and he did this before with me. We played a B.B. King thing, and he just came, played the blues. And yeah. Come on, we all play the blues. We all learned. Look, he sat with those Cream records like we did, and those John Mayall records, and those B.B. King records. Everybody has that at the root, you know, they really do. They can't deny that. And everybody wants to do it. And, you know, he's just one of my best friends.
That's so nice.
And just a great musician. So that, you know, he was on it, but Bob Weir was the surprise because I hadn't worked with Bob much. Would leave on a little bit. But I'm telling you, man, his energy is boundless. And we had so much fun playing. And he was very much like, yeah, have everybody come out, you know, like it's a family picnic, you know, and Uncle Bob. And that was a real pleasure for me. I understand it. You know, I saw the Grateful Dead in, what? Remember the Watkins Glen concert?
I was at Watkins Glen.
I was there. I got
We
there.
were in the same place a lot of times.
I got there early, right? A day early with my girlfriend, and
It rained.
It rained, but we got out there and we put this huge blanket out. And we got our stuff, you know, and the Dead came out and they sound checked for like 4 hours. The band didn't even sound check. The Allman Brothers didn't sound check.
The Allman Brothers didn't come out until like a million hours later.
Because the rain, right?
Oh my God.
So the Dead sound check is going on. I'm, you know, we're ingesting whatever's being passed.
Right.
And I fall asleep. I swear to God, 4 hours later I wake up and there's still sound check. And it could have only been 3, but it felt like 4. And worst of all, it felt like the same song. So, and then we sleep. Oh, we're going to sleep on the, you know, tomorrow is a show. When we get up and it's like people are laying on top of us. There was no big, we thought we staked out this big spot. Well, they're not going to, when they see our blanket, they're not going to come on it or touch it. We were like confined to this, like, you know, just like, what's up?
Mess.
And there were people with like no clothes on.
Oh, it was a mess.
People you didn't want to see with no clothes on.
The rain and getting to a
They
bathroom.
ran out of water. Remember the Great Bear water?
Yeah, it was crazy.
And then the band are going to go on first. I think under the Dead maybe.
No, I think it was the
band.
band.
The band went on first.
The band was first.
And then it started, as Levon telling me later, it was raining like God was pissing on a flat rock.
Wait a minute. I thought the New Riders. Weren't the New Riders? No, they weren't.
No, it was the band.
It was the band.
And the band go on, and Garth is up there challenging the Thunder. He's doing the genetic method before chest fever. And he's like having a battle with God, it seemed. And it, to me, maybe it was what I ate, but whatever
I don't
it was.
remember. I was too high.
It was the lunchbox that I didn't open.
Yeah.
Or I did open.
I had the lunchbox.
Anyway, then they had to wait for it to dry out. And the band came back out again.
Period.
And then the Dead went on for a long time.
Yes.
And they had just, in fact, this is funny thing is, Pigpen had just passed, and Keith and Donna were in the band at this time. So this was a new version that was coming out. The same with the Allmans. They had Chuck Leavell on piano, but no second guitar player, just Dickie. Berry was still there. I think Dwayne had just died, maybe, you know, and a guy parachuted down, remember? And he burned up. There was a guy jumped. He had a parachute, you know, where you take the parachute and you have like flares on your feet. Well, the flares burned him up. And he's coming down. He's burning up as he's coming down.
I don't remember that.
Oh, it was horrible.
Oh, my God.
And then people kept saying, Leon Russell's going to show up. And then they're like, Johnny Winter's going to show up. No, none of this was going to happen. No one else was going to show up. There wasn't time for anyone to show up with the Dead on the show.
Oh my God! It was like the longest show in the history of the world.
It was great, man. I loved being there, and because I missed Woodstock.
So did I.
You know, I was 14. I wasn't going to be. That would have been the end of my life at home. You know, if I had gone. I know kids that did.
My brother was there.
You know, and it didn't end their life at home. It was hard though when they got back. You know, it was hard to. I didn't have those kind of cojones to just say I'm going. You know, it was hard enough to get out of the house on Thanksgiving where Mad Dogs and Englishmen were playing. You know, how do you or was it Easter? It was like Easter.
I don't remember.
I think it was Easter. It was hard enough, and then when you get there, it's just Mad Dogs and Englishmen just looked like a subway, like a crowded subway on stage, because everybody was standing. 20 people on stage, no risers, so everybody's just like at stage level. And
so you couldn't see?
No, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It was, you know. But, yeah, so, you know, we saw a lot of music.
I was just going to say,
music.
we lived through some
It's still
cool
out there.
shit.
There's great shit happening still.
What turns you on today? Who turns you on now?
Marcus King, Tedeschi Trucks. There's more. Well, Government Mule, of course, always. You know, Warren inspired me to start my own trio, you know, and to do that, you know, and get back to guitar, bass, and drums. You know, those guys have done a lot. You know, of course, there's stuff coming up from under that. Even that's great, man. Right now, the two kids that I really love are Devin Allman and Dwayne Betts. They have their own Allman Betts band out right now. And my friend Johnny Statula plays slide with them. And they're going to come on. Who
are you listening to? And who do you listen to? Like if you're...
Well, you know, whatever. I'm still going backwards. You know, I'm still calling up Bob Margolin and saying, what's that record that Muddy told you about that was cut in 1938, you know? What was the one that came from, you know? And I'm still doing my you know, reverse archaeology on this music. Most of it, and I admittedly, most of what I like is retro, you know, because really there's only so much I can take in. You know, a lot of stuff is better left for other people to. I did learn one thing. If something is popular, there's a reason for it, and there is no reason to put it down. You know, because if millions of people like something, who the hell are you to say it's not good? It's good. It's not for you. And I used to find this even, you know, people like to tell you what they don't like. You know, when people would say to me, oh, you know, there's so many people, it's like this thing, it's like, oh, you work on Conan? Well, I don't like him. I don't watch him. I said, you know why? Because it's for the young kids. It's not for you.
I love it.
No, I mean, really, you know, my brother Floyd used to say, when people say, well, what are you doing? He says, you'll read about it in the papers. You know, just stop. You know, there's always you can always feel an ulterior motive. Somebody just wants to say something nasty to you. You know, and you know, that's what we have blogs for. You know, if you want to go read some stupid shit, go read a blog. Yeah. It used to be we allowed critics to thrive. For what reason, I don't know. Who are they? What do? Do they play instruments or act or sing or write or paint? No, they don't do any of those things.
They just criticize.
They just criticize. Now we have blogs, so we have millions of people unqualified that are writing stuff about people who are qualified to make music. Because if one person likes it, it's good for that one person.
So play something good for us.
No, I don't know anything good.
Play something before we go out. And but before we go
Well,
out,
I'm stuck
with
in
Jimmy,
open G. So
all right, before we go out with Jimmy playing something, I just want to say next week, Snuffy Walden's going to be with us.
Yeah.
The legendary Snuffy Walden, who I am first describing. I'm first figuring out was a rock star that I didn't even know. Stray Dog, I didn't even know. Okay, and then Norman Lear said yes to me today. I've been chasing Norman Lear for 2.5 years. Norman Lear is going to be with us. George Shapiro is going to be with us. I'm totally spacing now. We have.
What are you going to talk to Norman Lear about?
Yeah.
Mary Hartman, you're going to talk about.
You bet I am. And Fernwood Tonight. Norman was in the living room here. Norman came and did Women Who Write, which we're going to get you for, Jimmy.
Well, it gets no bigger than Norman Lear.
It gets no bigger.
No more important.
It gets no bigger than Norman
only
Lear.
Neil Simon was as important as Norman Lear.
Well, you talk about, this show being game changers, which you are one. Norman is the game changer. Okay, so we'll see you next week on the road. I was just going to say on the road taken. It's Game Changers. The show is now called Game Changers. But Jimmy, thank you so much for doing this.
We're going out with Muddy Waters.
We're going out with Muddy Waters. All right.
Well, I'm going away to leave. Won't be gone long. Going down south, child, don't you want to go? I need trouble. I'll be your word of mine. I'll never be satisfied. I just can't keep from crying. Well, I feel like snapping a pistol in your face. Child, let some graveyard people rest in peace. I'll be trouble you. All word of mine. I never, ever just can't be satisfied.
Woo! Jimmy Vivino, thank you so much.
The fastest version ever.
We'll see you next week on Game Changers. Thanks, Christina.
It's great.